Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club Podcast, where every month we deep dive into a different aspect of cinema, directors, actors, genres, or franchises. It doesn't matter, because it's always fun at the Film Club. I'm Dean.
I'm Boo.
And this month we're talking about horror comedies, and this week we're talking about...
Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Boobs. Yes, this is movies about boob jokes. Lots of boob jokes.
Dean's favorite.
It's hilarious. But yeah, this is not what we do in the shadows. I think we advertised that last week, but we had to change.
Yeah, we're going to shelve that for another day, but we're going to talk about Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Just celebrated its 35th anniversary a few weeks ago.
Yep, this came out in 1988. It stars Cassandra Peterson, also known as Elvira, and it's a horror comedy from, the 80s. I have thoughts on it, but we're going to get into that.
Yes, I'm kind of afraid to hear your thoughts on it because Elvira is my queen, the ghoul of my dreams. So
you've been having those puns in the back pocket for a while, haven't you?
Forever. I've been watching this movie for such a long time.
See, that's interesting because I had never seen this movie before. Like, I know of Elvira, right?
Everybody knows Elvira.
Everyone knows Elvira. She's kind of become a pop culture mainstay. But, like, my sister was like, oh, I used to watch this all the time. We used to rent it from Blockbuster all the time as a kid.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, yeah, I watch this all the time. Is this just... I'm curious, how do you get introduced to Elvira? Because you kind of come after Elvira's, like, peak years.
Yes, I'm in the aftermath, but my parents both used to watch Elvira. My mom really loves, cheesy horror movies, sci-fi movies, so Elvira was right up her path. It's the 80s. So when I was younger, I know that they would record whatever movie, they thought was cool. Like, oh, okay, that was a good horror movie. Let's, record it on a tape. So I'd watch those tapes, and then I think that's how I eventually saw Elvira, was through those tapes and through this movie on VHS.
Oh, fancy. Because... I don't think I have ever seen an episode of Elvira, but I know of Elvira from one of the parodies and stuff from, The Simpsons. And the
Booberella.
Booberella, yes. Look at her boobs.
Also, the person that plays Booberella on The Simpsons is in this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fucking great.
She's the news anchor that she gets into the fight with.
Oh, that's just lovely.
Yeah, so it's
also, The Simpsons permeating every part of pop culture.
Oh, yeah.
But, I know of Elvira through just pop culture osmosis, because she's one of these acts or characters or performers that just has never gone away. The stars, peaks and valleys or whatever, but she's never stopped doing Elvira. In the 40 years Cassandra Peterson's been playing the character.
Yeah, she's like Pee-wee.
A little bit. Actually, yeah, that's a good comparison, because they even started from the same place, because they were both in
the Groundlings.
Yeah, the comedy troupe. And we haven't talked about Pee-wee yet. We got to stop doing these out of order. I lose track of our timeline.
But, spoiler.
Yes, eventually. They don't know when that's going to come out. That could come out, next year sometime.
It could. Sometimes we record these things so far in advance.
Oh, yeah. Last week's episode, we recorded that in 2016. We weren't even in a podcast yet.
We weren't.
But, yeah, it's interesting because... Cassandra Peterson, Paul Rubens, a bunch of other people, they were in this comedy troupe in Los Angeles called The Groundlings that was kind of a feeding ground into SNL or other television gigs and things like that. And it's very interesting looking at the evolution of Elvira, because that kind what she's famous for doesn't even exist anymore. The late night TV horror host, those aren't really a thing anymore.
No, and up until we get Elvira, there was really two people
that were major
that did this. And just to see her origins, where she was a little girl in Kansas that fell in love with horror and eventually moved out to Las Vegas to be a showgirl. I had a chance meeting with Elvis and a date with Elvis where he told her, you can't stay here in Vegas because your star is going to burn out here.
Sorry. Baby, you can't stay here in Vegas. Your soul's gonna burn out here. Oh, maybe you
Oh,
should go out to Los Angeles. Oh, you'll find yourself some big dreams and movie stars.
telling you, you got to listen to these episodes because sometimes, we conjure the spirits and, we have the king here.
You know it, baby. King's never left. Oh, I'm gonna go get myself a peanut butter banana sandwich. Goodbye, mama. Oh. Sorry, did I miss Elvis? Sorry, I went to the bathroom and I heard like some.
I told you got to get that checked. If you didn't have to keep running to the bathroom, you wouldn't miss the king.
It's every time I leave, I feel like David Lynch and Jimmy Stewart show up, and this time it was Elvis.
They do. I mean, we just don't take selfies because we don't want to make you jealous. But
I know. It'd be weird, But yeah. So what were you saying? Like I think I heard in the bathroom, she was a showgirl.
Yeah,
Elvis.
she was a showgirl. Her name was not Lola.
Lola? Oh, was that the king again? I think I heard him.
No, Barry Manilow.
Barry Manilow.
Copacabana. Her name was Lola. She was a showgirl.
I can't do Barry Manilow. I can't do Manilow.
I mean that song is fire though. So she was a showgirl in Las Vegas, and the reason why she came out to Las Vegas was she saw the movie Viva Las Vegas starring Elvis and Anne Margaret, and she just fell in love with Anne Margaret's character, and she wanted to go do that. So she went to Vegas and, she started this career, and eventually she ended up on a date with Elvis. And I mean, what street cred do you have there that you got to, go out with the king?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this date was before he was like fat, out of shape Elvis. He was still like, he was middle-aged Elvis, but he was like still good-looking Elvis.
This is when he had his residency there, but yeah, this was before the real downfall of his career. And that's when he gave her that advice, you can't stay here. You're going to burn out here. If you go out to California because you want to be in the movies, you're really going to have something there. So it's like, get advice from the king, you take it.
Yes.
And then that's when we get Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. I mean, eventually, because, she does a couple of, small roles in movies, and
she works with the Groundlings in the comedy troupe for a while, like a long while.
A long while, and it's Pee-wee that that breaks out, and he creates this character, and it's kind of like that's what leads her once she lands Elvira for the TV show, for saying what, she's doing good, the studio offers her a show because they're like she would be great on a sitcom. And then after seeing her friend Pee-wee take it up a notch by doing a movie, she's like, I don't want a sitcom, I want to have my own film.
When did she become Elvira? Was that 81?
I think it was the early 80s. I think she did a couple years of it. And because she was just so engaging, people were like, we want more of her. Because she was, there for like the commercial breaks. So it's not like...
She would do like the skits and the gags and stuff when
it's not
movies
like,
weren't on.
We're not getting like a full, hour of her. We're just getting bits and pieces of her. And it's, she's so charming. She's so funny. It's like, we want more of that. And I think that's when, they were like, well, let's do a show so we could give the people more. And then she's like, no, I'm going to, capitalize. I'm going to do a movie.
Yeah, because it is interesting because she wants to do the movie, I think, before even Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
No, Pee-wee's Big Adventure had already came out. And that's why she was inspired.
Does Pee-wee come out in 85?
Pee-wee came out in... Pee-wee did come out in 1985.
Okay.
And then this movie comes out in 88. So she sees the success with Pee-wee's Big Adventure. She's also in the movie.
Yeah. She's,
the biker mama in the movie. And she's like, okay. And then the studio gives her the go-ahead. Yeah, let's do it. You can hold your own as this character. Let's run with it. And then she was like, I want Tim Burton to direct it. Because he understands, he is into...
He gets this... He's from the same world that me and Paul Rubens and all of us are kind of from, right?
Yeah. And they work together in that film. But it turns out he couldn't do it because he was working on a little film called Beetlejuice. To
go into the absolute insane run that Tim Burton goes on, which might be one of the most meteoric rising star stories of any director in Hollywood history.
Oh, yeah.
Going from Pee-wee to Beetlejuice to Batman. And after that, he just keeps going up with Edward Scissorhands, with Batman Returns, like A Night Before Christmas. Like, again, like meteoric rise for that guy.
Yeah, so once I read that, I was like, damn, I could have had an Elvira movie with Tim Burton at the helm, and then Pee-wee was supposed to be in this movie too because they were friends, they were part of the Groundlings. But he was filming Big Top Pee-wee at the same time as she was filming this movie.
And we're gonna get into a thing about like the director of this, because that is, I'm just gonna throw it out there. I stake a lot of what is not good about this movie in the director's seat, and I feel Tim Burton would have made a much different film.
Oh yeah, I mean, I love this movie. Probably because I'm biased, but I mean, it's not a bad movie.
Boo, biased about movies she likes? No.
Who would have known?
No, you've never like adamantly defended a movie that I thought wasn't very good and called me a monster for saying so.
Perhaps.
Never once. Never once.
Perhaps. But after hearing, that Tim Burton possibly could have directed this, I was like, damn, what could have been. But still, I love this movie. She co-wrote this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the same vein with, Paul Rubens co-writing Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And do you know who one of the people it was that she co-wrote this movie with?
Oh God, I feel so bad. I know they're people that are in Pee-wee's Playhouse. Who?
One of your favorite characters
in all of Pee-wee's Playhouse?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not Cowboy Curtis. Is it the genie?
Yes, it is.
It is the genie. Oh, sweet. Hi, Micah, hiney, ho. Fucking love the genie from Pee-wee's Playhouse. Let's fucking go.
He helped her co-write this movie. And I feel like that's where we get, the true comedy of this movie is Cassandra Peterson.
Yes.
And, some of the
supporting cast, the supporting groundlings.
Yeah, and I mean, some of the other writing is from the studio. Hey, make this joke, where it's kind of like, I don't think Elvira would make that joke. But...
Well, I know the key thing that really was forced by the studio is the teenager subplot.
Yes.
Which, okay, do we feel we have enough backstory for Cassandra Peterson and Elvira to get into Elvira, Mistress of the Dark?
I mean, I feel like I could sit here with her book, Yours Cruelly, and just read it off. But yeah, I think we're going to have to just jump into the movie.
Okay, because Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, I'm going to give everyone just like a quick synopsis of the movie, because I really want to get into more specific things about it. But here's the thing. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, back of the box for this one. The late night horror host Elvira is about to open a new act in Las Vegas, but she needs $50,000 to get it off the ground, and she has a chance to get paid out when her distant aunt dies. Now Elvira goes to an uptight town I got this, I swear to God. Elvira now goes to an uptight town to claim her inheritance and turn the whole town upside down in the process. Fighting her sorcerer Uncle Vinny, the uptight religious majority city council, and saving teenagers' weekends in the process. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out there, the big broad scopes of this movie. Cassandra Peterson is great. I think she's incredibly charming. She has a lot of on-screen charisma. Her jokes are, for the most part, pretty good. I think she has great chemistry with Bob, played by Daniel Green, who I think is like one of the funniest straight men in any of these comedies we've seen. And the Uncle Vinny actor, Vincent Morgan something, he is great in this.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he is so good.
Do you know who? Sorry, I want to jump to Boo Facts because I'm so excited about. Of
course. You get your Boo Fact in, and then we're gonna go into why I did not like the movie, or the things I didn't like about the movie. I did like the movie.
Do you know who Uncle Vinny was supposed to be originally?
I'm gonna go with a name like Vinny, and he's playing some sort of older, a supernatural fellow, and is probably somebody from the mid-50s, character horror icon. Orson Welles.
No.
Oh, Vincent Price?
Yes.
Damn it. Should have gone with my gut.
Yeah, and I guess, they approached him and he was just like, I have to politely decline because I'm not really
into raunchy comedies.
Yeah, I'm not really into that. So we almost could have gotten an Elvira, Vincent Price, Tim Burton movie.
Which honestly would have been like the tits. Honestly.
Well, I mean, considering the fact that the movie that Elvira or Cassandra Peterson really wanted to make was like Elvira was a Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
It's, this girl from Kansas because
she's from Kansas.
And she is going along, the yellow brick road to her dreams, and then you have the studio where it's like, no, we want the teenagers to, to vibe with this. So you got to go save the teenagers. You basically have to do Flashdance.
Yeah, she literally does Flashdance. No, she's not doing Flashdance. She's doing Footloose.
Footloose, thank you.
Yes, and that's the thing about the movie, and here's the gripes I have about it. Because the actors in this, I think, are great. They're super funny. Mm-hmm. They are all doing, like, really good shtick. I think, the boob jokes, there's a lot of boob jokes in here. I'd say, like, 70% of them are good and they land. When she starts doing like 3 or 4 of them in a row and there's no pacing, then I'm like, okay, you're getting a little old here. Go on to a new shtick, and then you eventually go on a new shtick. But what I have an issue with is in the production of this. I think the script is questionable, and I think the direction is not all there. Mm-hmm. Like, the director for this, I actually wrote his name down. Forgot about the writers. James Signorelli. Now, that name doesn't sound familiar to you at all, right?
No.
Okay. I can guarantee you have seen his work, though, because I know that you are a fan of SNL. He's directed 400 episodes of SNL.
Oh, okay.
Or he's directed, executive produced, whatever. He's worked for SNL for, like, decades. I think it's from 1980 to 2011.
Oh, wow.
And that's, like, basically all he's done. He's directed like one other feature film at this point, but he does like live TV sketch comedy. Mm-hmm. And that is a vibe I get from watching this, because I don't know if you noticed this, and this might be something that I'm noticing because I'm fucking anal retentive about this shit, because I edit movies. So when Cassandra Peterson or Elvira makes a joke or when Bob says, "Oh my God, are you okay? Oh, how's your head?" And Elvira says,
"I've never gotten any complaints."
And it's like, oh, that's a funny joke. Oh, yeah, how's your head? Never got any complaints. Oh, blowjob joke. Oh, yeah, that's a fun, raunchy thing. But you notice when she does that, there's a beat where the camera doesn't cut away from her. She's like standing there, and it's a little weird. And that's something you get from doing live comedy, is because you hold on that moment to give the audience a chance to laugh.
Yeah.
But it's a movie. There's no studio audience.
Yeah.
What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to like, oh, that's the joke. You cut over to the guy's reaction. You're playing with a visual. Like, you're trying to continue the pace of the visual narrative. Mm-hmm. And that's something that happens in this movie, is there's so many moments where Cassandra Peterson tells a joke, and it's like, oh, funny one-liner, quip, or, gag, whatever. And it'll hold a beat at the end of every one to give the studio audience a chance to laugh. And it chugs the pace of this movie like crazy for me, and that like made me feel awkward, and it makes me angry, because I'm like, John Waters should have directed this movie.
John Waters, Tim Burton.
I think I wrote this down in my notes. This movie would have been a 5-star 80s classic if Tim Burton or John Waters directed this movie. Could you imagine? Because this is right before he does Crybaby. We could have gotten Crybaby era John Waters making an Elvira movie. Sure, y'all throw it in there. Sure, he'll probably get Johnny Depp to play one of the teenagers. Fine, fuck it. But it would be so fucking good.
I mean, there was, a small actor by the name of Brad Pitt that did audition to be one of the teenagers in this movie.
And Elvira was like, there's no way I'm ending up with the other guy if Brad Pitt's cast in this movie.
She was just like too young, but I think she made like a production note, yum. And I was just like, I mean, young Brad Pitt, like, hey.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this movie because, it's been a part of my life. It's so funny. I mean,
I'm not arguing about the comedy in here. I think it's good.
It makes me wonder what could have been if they had followed what she really wanted to do. And this movie was a flop, not because of the comedy, but because this movie was made by NBC, which makes sense because, NBC, SNL.
Yeah, and I believe it was World Cinema.
It was New World Pictures.
New World Pictures, that's right.
That, set up and distributed, not distributed, but they made the movie and they distributed it. And at that same time, they filed for bankruptcy, which means they couldn't afford to promote this movie. They couldn't give it to as many theaters, so it only went out to like a handful of theaters. So because there was no marketing behind it, it just flopped.
I think I have it written down. It was originally going to premiere on 3,000 screens. Like, it was going to be a nationwide major release because Elvira, I think, had already at this point become, like, had peaked in terms of, like, pop culture popularity, and she was going down a little bit, but her name brand was still, like, solidified, right?
By this point, she was an icon.
Yes.
And she still is.
So they were, like, wide release. This movie cost, like, $7.5 million. It cost basically nothing. We'll just release it in a bunch of theaters. It'll make its money back. But New World goes out of business. All the theaters changed, like, cut their deal with it because, like, okay, well, we can't pay you anything. Yeah. Fuck it. And it goes from that to, like, 300 screens.
And then, you know, the critics tear it apart. And, you know, you just feel bad for her because when you kind of read, you know, her backstory, and it's like she almost gets there and then, you know, something happens. And it was the same with her show where she was supposed to be getting paid more. And it was a thing where they weren't. But they'd be like, we can't pay you more, but we can give you, oh, you want to do merchandising for your character? Okay. So over the years where she should have been making more money, she was getting more and more titles, you know, to Elvira, where by the time the studio, I think, went under, or the production studio, she completely owned the character of Elvira.
Yeah, which, honestly, genius business decision. For that one.
I mean, it's like, yeah, you lost out on the money that the studio owed you, but it's like you own this character through and through, and you can market it and you can sell it whatever way you can. You don't have to worry about, oh, this studio's not going to let me work for that studio. No, I take my character wherever I want to take my character.
Yeah, that's a thing, because I think people might, I mean, like, because Elvira appeared in a bunch of different, like, guest spots on a bunch of different TV shows throughout the 80s, 90s. She never fell out of pop culture.
I went through her Wikipedia where it shows, like, all the listings of her character appearances. She was in the second WrestleMania.
Yes, WrestleMania 2. She did guest announcing.
She did a lot of, like, Halloween hosting for MTV. Lots of commercials, lots of co-hosting on things. So it's like she's been consistently working. So that's why it was, you know, kind of sad that the movie flopped when, you know, she had such high hopes because Pee-wee, you know, just skyrocketed through the box office.
Yes.
But it was a thing where it flopped in the you know, in the theaters. But in 1990, when it finally came out onto, like, basic cable and to VHS, it was rated, like, the #1 movie.
It is so interesting.
It was the bestseller video and one of the highest rated programs of that year.
See, that's the thing. It is so interesting that happens, because it feels like that's something that would happen, like, now, right? Like, that feels like the internet is reclaiming this movie, and now, you know, cult movie from the 1980s is now the #1 selling DVD because 2% of the population knows about it, but 2% of the population guaranteed is going to buy it.
You know what? It just popped in my head. This is another Monster Squad.
A little bit.
It didn't have the marketing that it needed. It flopped. People said, oh...
The production's weird and it doesn't always hit, so the critics don't like it.
Yeah, and then, you know, you have the audiences that see it and they're like, no, this is a masterpiece. What do you mean? You know,
it's not a masterpiece. It's a fun movie.
It's a fun... Yeah, but I mean, for them to kind of, you know, like, oh, no, it flopped. It's nothing. It's like, no, this is a good movie. It just wasn't given a chance.
It is interesting that Elvira, who basically championed the, you know, let's make fun of old cult B movies, made a movie that turned into a cult film.
Yeah.
And okay, I'm going to go back to, like, talking about the actual Elvira Mistress of the Dark film real quick. So, did the movie feel like they were trying to make a cult film? Like, they were trying to make kind of like a B-picture schlocky thing? Or do you feel that this is a little bit of an 80s pastiche? Because we're getting, like, a Flashdance reference. We're getting references to stuff like Footloose. We're getting references to, like, you know, like the witchcraft stuff with her Uncle Vinny is, like, the closest to a B-movie schlocky stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's a little bit of parody in there. It's just so hard to see, you know, what could have been and what was in that original script that she co-wrote. compared to this. Yeah, because I mean, you feel like you're pulling from different things from pop culture. And I mean, it's kind of autobiographical in the sense that, she's playing herself, who is this hostess, where it's just, yeah, and here's this crappy movie and blah, 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 but it's great because I love, cheesy horror movies. And then seeing her work in reverse where she becomes a showgirl versus her real life where she goes from being a showgirl to being in the movies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of...
Also, I just need to point this out. The showgirl climax at the end, I was like, what the fuck is this? I was like, I had to look up the rating for this movie. I was so surprised this was PG-13 when she ends the movie with, I'm not gonna lie, a very impressive and probably a masterfully done a nipple tassel routine.
And that was something, again, autobiographical, because she learned how to do that when she was like 14.
Why is a 14-year-old learning how to do nipple tassels?
You need to read her book. It's a very, it's a good autobiography. But
I assume you read it like the Bible.
Oh, yeah. But, it's this thing where it's like you start to see the pieces of her reality.
Mm.
And that's why it's kind of like it's hard to define this movie because you have autobiography in it, and then you have parody, and then you have satire. So it's just there's a lot going on in this movie.
That's another thing about the movie, and it's that the tone of the movie is very odd, because I'm never sure who the audience for the movie is, because it's like it's trying to aim at teenagers with the whole like the bulk of the plot being like this footloose Elvira's coming in and gonna loosen up the town and make everything good again.
Yeah.
And then there's like this like Hammer horror parody in there that you're only gonna get if you're like a college plus aged student or maybe like a 30-year-old dude in 1988, because you're the only one who's going to be old enough to like, oh yeah, I remember these horror movies of Christopher Lee back in the 60s. Or the other thing is like the Elvira fandom. I don't know how close this is to her show, because again, I don't think I've ever watched Elvira what is it, Hour of the Macabre or Macabre Hour, because I figured this out. A lot of the stuff she can't release anymore on DVD is because a lot of the rights for the movie she used to parody are now like ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, and I know that I think in one of the evolutions of her show, they were doing like
what is it, public domain?
Yeah, public domain movies where it's just they're accessible, but
they're free.
They're free, yeah. But versus like in the beginning where it was like, oh yeah, these are big films and of course people own the rights to these, but I think it was...
I mean, not big films, but they were like name brand bad movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what was it, in 2020? It was like, I think the 40th anniversary of her show. And they did like a special thing on Shudder where she was back and she was doing her favorite films. And I think she started with House on Haunted Hill.
Yes.
And that was the movie, her first horror movie that she saw, the movie that, awoke her inner Elvira. So it's just, it's interesting to see how that, how that changed her life and how we see it, in her career. So it's like, yeah, I can see where that might be a little bit difficult to rein in something of that caliber. Because it's Vincent Price. It's like, yeah, that's one of the best horror movies out there.
Well, I'm just talking about like the whole thing of like her show. I've never seen it. I've only ever seen like very small clips, but it seems more sketchy.
Yeah, it's sketch, comedy. So that's why, it's different, because it's like you're watching the movie, you get a commercial break, she's there for,
2 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a small beat, you get the comedy and then it cuts to a commercial and then it cuts back to the movie. So it's like we get her in these small doses. And it's like finally in this movie, we get her for the entire movie.
And it's interesting that it's not a sketch movie. It's not something like UHF. I don't know. Have you seen UHF, the Weird Al movie?
No, I haven't seen that one.
Okay, well that movie follows like the dynamic of They own a UHF station,
Mm-hmm.
and this is all the little sketches and weird, wacky TV shows they're doing in this station, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically like kind of a sketch movie, right? And or like Kentucky Fried Movie or what have you. It would be so I think there's definitely a script or a movie out there that uses Elvira, or maybe the audience who were going into this thought that's what it was going to be. It was going to be like a sketch show
Mm-hmm.
for like the 90 minutes Elvira's on there. Maybe, it'd be like a little bit more elaborate. Maybe, oh, we need to save the studio before it goes under so we can keep, Elvira Macabre still kicking and going. So now we're going to do an all night Elvira movie marathon. And that's what the movie was going to be, is like a backstage musical, but for Elvira's TV station, all the weird, wacky goings on there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that's what people expected the movie to be, and what they got was Footloose, but with tits. Maybe that's what they were. That's like maybe a reason why the movie didn't do as well as it did. I mean, the movie I think is still funny, is a thing. I don't want people to think I don't like the movie. I like the movie. It's funny. Production issues aside, I think it still functions as a pretty like nice little 80s comedy.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's what it feels like. An 80s comedy. It's just, you could sit there and you could just enjoy it. You don't have to really, dissect it. But yeah, you did make a point earlier when you were talking about, at this time, not too many people were, familiar with the Hammer films.
Yes.
It's not like now where, you could hear a reference in a movie and you could just Google it and be like, oh, okay, this is what they're talking about.
The media literacy of current day cinephiles and audience watchers is so much more advanced than it was in like the 80s or the 70s especially, because home video didn't exist until like what, the early 80s?
Yeah, early 80s. And I mean, at the time, I did write this down somewhere in my notes, because they talked about when this movie came out on VHS for the first time. Yeah, I found it. First issued on VHS and beta in 1989. It was $89.95 to buy it.
Yeah. Oh, that's something people don't understand. So back in the day, and I know this because my uncle Alien, love that guy. He was one of the first generation or first people to adopt VHSs and VCRs. He owned a VCR in 1983. It cost him $1,200.
Yeah.
And then every tape that you had to buy, because they were exorbitantly expensive, were like $90. That's why video rental stores were so big. And that's also why Top Gun became one of the most like best-selling, most profitable VHSs of all time, because it was the first VHS that cost $20, because the producers or whatever got Pepsi to buy up half the production cost of them.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yes, to advertise the movie. And that is the huge boom in VHS marketing, is post Top Gun. All right, Tom Cruise at the heart of Hollywood history here. But yeah, like, God, because we're like the last generation of people to actually like have a blockbuster a major part of their life, right? Like that, like
every time I go to my Habit,
you remember Blockbuster?
I walk in and I'm like, this was once a Blockbuster. I was once here every Friday night picking out movies for the weekend.
I was a Hollywood Video guy.
Oh, same.
I had one within walking distance of my house. But that's like a thing, right? We're that last generation where home video rental was like a major staple of your like media consumption.
Yeah.
Now, I think when DVD came out, because DVD actually was a much cheaper process to produce, that's when movies started to become cheaper to get. And then when the internet came out, it was like all
dunzo.
It was dunzo. Like you can see any movie at the click of a button. And the media literacy was like so much different than it is now than it was back in 1988 when Elvira came out. See, I'm rounding back to the movie, right? The history lesson's almost over, people. Hold on. But yeah, like in 88 when this movie comes out, I really think that's like she's climbing an uphill battle trying to make reference to Hammer films, or trying to make reference to Vincent Price or older like B movies. She's climbing an uphill battle there.
But I think that's also what makes her so special, is that, she loves the horror genre, but she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah. I mean, she's making like some jokes on on their expense, but
Yeah.
from a loving place.
Yeah, it's from a loving place, but it's, the horror community at this point was smaller compared to now, where it's just, you see it's more mainstream. More people are like, oh yeah, I love horror movies, and it's like, well, where have you been?
Well, I mean, the 80s was dominated by slashers, so if you were not into slasher movies, you were not into horror movies in the 1980s.
And that's why it's like you had Elvira as your source for everything horror. She knew the history, and even if it was a cheesy movie, I mean, again, in this movie, just to make this movie, more near and dear to my heart, she screens Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. And it's just like, it's these little movies.
I got questions about that scene, but we'll get into it.
But it's just, it's movies like that where, you may have heard of it or never heard of it. And, you've got Elvira's Macabre Hour going, and you're like, you know what? Let me sit back and, watch this. It might be ridiculous, but watching it with her, she's going to make it a fun experience.
She'll make jokes at the expense, and it'll be like, oh, man, that's a bad movie. Man, that shit is, ugh. You know, she understands that the movies aren't good, but they're enjoyably fun.
Yeah.
And, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, that's what she does to save the movie theater. This has a save the movie theater plot. That should have just been the main plot of the movie is, Elvira, we're from the sleepy town, and they're going to close down our movie theater. Can you come and save our theater? And it could have just been a cheesy, Elvira saves the day.
That? Saving the movie theater.
I appreciate saving the movie theater. Save more movie theaters. People go to the movies and watch good movies.
Go to the Frida.
Go to the Frida Cinema. Great theater. But they're watching Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, and Elvira's essentially doing a live show. Stuff she does now.
If she did something like that, recent, if she did that, I would be there.
Yeah, but she's doing a live show, and at first you're just like, oh, this is fun. Elvira's doing her shtick. It's nice.
The kids are finally able to let their hair down, and this is awesome. I get to, be out with people. This is so cool.
And then she does a burlesque dance number, and it's a flash dance parody. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't think this movie on a technical level, production level, whatever, it's not great, right? I think on a comedy level, though, this fucking Flashdance parody, I fucking laugh the entire time. It is so ridiculous. It legit comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And they kind of set it up. She's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do the thing in Flashdance where she does the bucket of water. Oh, it's gonna be great, but I'll do glitter, and it's gonna be wonderful. And I'm like, okay, it's gonna be a gag. It's not. It's whatever. But then she does a shot for shot Flashdance parody.
Yeah.
And then it gets getting more elaborate. She starts doing fucking backflips. Okay, her stunt double starts doing backflips, and then it suddenly turns into a Flashdance parody and cuts into a Carrie parody.
Yeah.
Where she turns the thing and she gets tarred and feathered, and it's what the fuck is this?
It's Elvira. Of course it can't turn out perfect. She gets tarred and feathered, and then it's, it's the revenge plot. Okay, I've tried to survive in your town, and I have just had it with you guys. Now it's my turn.
Yes, and it's so...
And it's hilarious when she gets her revenge back.
Yes, I love how her revenge is, I'm gonna basically give everyone at this cookout essentially ecstasy, and they're just gonna wanna just bang in the woods. And it's
all these, holier than thou people, where when you see these meetings with them, it's like, oh, you're a pedo. Oh, you're a pervert. And it just goes, hand in hand with a lot of these, I don't know what the correct terminology is.
It's what it is it's a 80s send up to the moral majority that got big in the Reagan era, which is a thing that I feel the movie is definitely commenting on, the whole fact that the city council is this very, squeaky clean, white religion, all this stuff. Let's put this out, because the Reagan era was dominated by him being like, we're going to go back to classic American morals and American values, yada, yada, yada.
The town was also named after, I think he was a pastor, kind of like these big, TV pastors that we have now where,
which got big in the Reagan era.
So they named the town after him, kind of as a haha, screw you, we're going to make fun of you and, your morals, but you don't really have morals because, you're corrupt.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing the movie is definitely commenting on, is this, the Reagan era, holier than thou, Christian televangelist, whatever, yada, yada, yada. which Footloose does the comment
Yeah.
on, right? But the thing is like, is this comes out in '88. Reagan's done, right? Like, I think we're going
We're
in.
into the Bush era.
Yeah, it's George H.W. and he has like a one-term presidency, but he is Reagan light. He loses the moral majority thing. It's like, don't get me wrong, the guy wasn't fucking progressive, but he was a little more lighthearted than Reagan was about it. But the whole thing with that is, I feel like this movie and this viewpoint and this perspective and this line it's going on would have worked gangbusters in an 84 or 85 and not an 88 when we're at the end of that era, when everyone's kind of like, yeah, of course, like, why are you making fun of this? We all know it's ridiculous. I feel like that's something about the movie that is odd to me, is the movie, the humor, the jokes, the gags, I think they work, but they feel like they should have been in an earlier 80s style comedy. The boob jokes, the more like raunchy vulgarity style, things like that. The rampant sex jokes in the movie, which I ain't gonna lie, I laughed a lot in this movie. But it feels like that's something that should have been in a Meatballs or Porky's or, comedies of an earlier era and not 88. 88 feels a little late for it.
Yeah.
When did she want to make the movie originally? Was it 85? Was it literally after Pee-wee?
Yeah, I think it was right after Pee-wee.
Do you think this would have worked better in an 86 or maybe even 87 than it does in 88? I mean, it would have probably done better right away just because New World wouldn't have gone out of business.
Yeah, but again, I think it could have been, its own thing if Tim Burton or a John Waters had taken on this project.
Or Spielberg, we get the schmaltzy family Spielberg.
No,
who would be
no,
okay? I know we're
no.
making fun of James Signorelli a little bit because he's a very distinctive directing style that just doesn't play in narrative film. Plays great on live TV, but who would have been the worst like mainstream Hollywood director they could have gotten for this? Is it Steven Spielberg? Would he just not have gotten this shit at all?
Yeah, and it's not a knock at his talent. It's just
this is not his vibe.
Not his vibe, he goes for the heartstrings, and in this movie it's like, this is, horror and rock and roll. And like very, very different.
You need a punk rock kind of aesthetic to this.
I mean, I was up late last night trying to find the song that plays when she's in her car on her way to the will reading.
Yes.
I did find it. I can't think of what it is. It's a kick-ass song. The car is named Kick-Ass.
That's something about the Elvira aesthetic that's kind of funny. She's this valley girl, like goth queen, punk rock metal girl, right?
And I guess when she was in the Groundlings, that was like her character that she had built was this valley girl. And when she went in to audition for Elvira, she brought that in, and that's what people kind of loved was she's this, goth mistress of the night. But she's part valley girl. She
looks like Vampira, but she talks like a mall queen.
Yes.
And that's the thing about it that's so interesting, is that like the dichotomy of what she looks like and how she acts. And I think that's why it's so charming. But I'm sorry, like the whole like aesthetic and style and like comedy routine of the Elvira movie, I just find very fascinating. I am fascinated by how big Elvira, the pop culture, act, shtick, whatever, got so big. I'm so fascinated by how Cassandra Peterson started as a local, like, public access TV host and propelled herself into like
an
icon mainstream. I'm gonna host an 8-hour MTV horror music block for Halloween night, and then I'm gonna follow that up by doing it again the next year, and I'm gonna do like nationwide commercials, and I'm gonna do guest spots on Chips and this and that. I'm gonna be on SNL as Elvira, and then again next week as Cassandra Peterson.
Yeah,
it is insane to me how Elvira got so goddamn big, and the movie she is in did not get nearly the production backing and creative freedom it probably should have gotten.
It deserved a lot.
Yeah. Like the fact the budget's like 7.5, because what is it? Pee-wee was like 10.5. 10 something.
I mean, considering that was Tim Burton's first feature film.
Yes. And like Pee-wee was big, right? But
oh yeah.
Pee-wee is, but at that point, that's before the show. It was a very good like stage act, had an HBO special, popular or whatever. But Elvira was a nationwide like pop star or pop icon. Again, like I watched the movie and I'm like, man, what we got, this is just, you're missing something to make this movie like, 5 out of 5 cult classic, or like 5 out of 5 like mainstream comedy classic. But as it stands, it's like, god damn, like I want to like the movie more. I just can't look past some of the production problems with it.
And me, I just love this movie so much that I ignore it, or I don't see it. I mean, I obviously...
You have the goth veil over your eyes. I cannot see the flaws of the film.
I don't. But no, I mean, in reality, I can see the flaws, and I could see where things could have been worked out better, established a little bit stronger. But...
more boob jokes.
No.
There's enough boob jokes.
There's enough boob jokes. I mean,
you don't think there were like maybe too many? Maybe 2 big ones too many?
I don't know. I mean, you're making some good points there, but...
I mean, 2 nice, juggy kind of points.
Yeah. Yeah, but, it's just Elvira, Cassandra Peterson's humor is so strong. I mean, let's go back to that sequence in the car. Her travel from
LA to Massachusetts.
In her macabre mobile. And it's just, obviously the car is awesome. But, it's just the little sequences as she goes where it's, she picks up an axe murder. And it's like, these funny things where it's like, don't pick up that hitchhiker. He might be an axe murderer. And then, they cut to black and the guy's, desperately trying to crawl out of the car and he leaves his axe behind. And she just, wields the axe and, pegs the guy off camera. It's, these small things or...
those little vignette moments when she's driving, I'm like, why couldn't this be the movie? Why couldn't it be a road movie where it's Elvira going across the country and here's her little, like, sketchy vignettes as she's going across? That would have been hilarious.
Or even, when she goes to the gas station. The gas attendant?
Yes, the gas attendant who's sitting there reading a girly mag and he's like, yeah, lady, you can pump the gas, whatever. And he's like not paying attention to her. He's reading like a literal nudie mag. And then there's like Elvira there, right? Who, whatever you're into, sure. Cassandra Peterson, Elvira, whatever. America was into Elvira. And she's cleaning the thing, the boobs on the window or whatever. And he's just like, man, why is this woman taking so long pumping her gas? Why shouldn't I get out of here? Well, I'll read my nudie mag. And it's like that's a funny visual gag.
That's also the genie from Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Isn't that like also her husband or like her ex-husband?
No, I don't think they were married. She was married to I think he was like a rock star and then he was like her manager. But you start to see kind of like Paul Rubens where they tie in, their friends into their projects.
Yeah.
And I think an important person that's tied into the movie but isn't there is Robert Redding.
Oh, yeah.
That was her best friend. He helped her...
like, design the character.
He came up with the concept art of Elvira. Aunt Morgana, her portrait in the house, he painted that. So Bob, her love interest in the movie, that's who he's named after.
Oh, that's a sweet little tribute.
And that's who the movie is dedicated to after when the credits begin to roll. So you start to see, really these pulls from reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yeah, why can't we get more, realism in the movie where it's like, yeah, you have this funny scene where, she kind of lights the gas station on fire, but you've got her friend that's, the gas station attendant. And it's just like, yeah, we could have used more of that where it's just, oh, cool, we're pulling, people that have helped you get here.
It would have been, okay.
Versus the teenagers where she is helping them, but it's just kind of like, you're straying from the original vision.
The teenagers subplot in this, or I guess it's like the plot in this, but the teenager stuff feels like really out of place because like it doesn't feel like she has enough to work with in those sequences. I mean, she does have some good ones, just like, oh, she's renovating the house and the kids show up and like, hey, Elvira, we got another guy to help, fix the house up. And she's like, all right, kids, grab a hammer and start pounding. No, she says, looking over her,
No, she says, grab a tool and start banging.
Grab a tool and start banging, as she says, looking over her ass, who is that is perfectly in the frame for this.
Yeah, because she's scrubbing the patio.
Of course, there's
Yeah.
totally no like double entendre meant for this
No.
movie. But like stuff like that where I'm like, it would have been, that is the thing about this movie that makes me angry, is I'm thinking of like 1,000 hilarious ways you could have gone with this. Of if it was a cross country journey, she has to go from LA to Massachusetts, and she's going through different schlocky B horror premises. Like she stops at a motel, but the motel is actually ran by a mad scientist.
Or it's the Bates Motel.
Or yeah, she stops at the like a parody of the Bates Motel, and oh, Elvira does this. Or it's like, oh, she's driving and she gets stopped at, Frankenfurter's Evil Manor, and she has to go through a mad scientist gag. It's a thing where it's like you could build like the premise, she has to go from point A to point B to collect her inheritance, and throughout there she has to go through 4 or 5 horror movie vignettes like her show. And it could be a thing where it's like, man, I thought LA was wild, because that would be a very different movie. But I think that's more in line with the humor of the show, and like more in line with like the character she'd be building, because the teenager stuff just doesn't work for me.
There's also been memes over the years where people have said that there should have been a movie starring Elvira and Dolly Parton where they're sisters.
I've heard
and like
that.
These long lost sisters, and it's a road movie, and it's the sisters, getting to know each other.
It should be a Thelma and Louise parody film starring Dolly Parton and Elvira, and they're traveling from Dollywood to Hollywood, and they're trying to be like, look, we gotta get to Hollywood if we're ever gonna save Dollywood. And Elvira's like, why would I save Dollywood? Well, you're my sister now, so you got to. I'll give you Elvira World if you want. Elvira World, well, that might be, worth it. Like, you could come up with a joke, right? You can come up with a parody. But okay, like, I'm just going to try and stick onto the movie at hand that we actually have and give it more credit than I might be giving it. Or give it the credit it probably deserves. And that comes down to the performances.
Yeah.
And I think the performances are all good. All of them. I love the actor who's playing Bob. Again, I think his name is Daniel Green. And because he looks like fucking Fabio. He's just this big, jacked, good-looking dude that Elvira's like, oh my, you're, pretty ripe. And every time Elvira's making these, like, sexual double entendre, he just looks, like, confused. And like,
it goes right over his head.
Right over his head, and it's so much funnier. It's so much funnier when somebody is telling you a joke and they're not registering it as a joke. They just think you're being like completely sincere. It's the baseline of like the Leslie Nielsen comedy, right? He's doing these ridiculous things, but he is not playing it like a joke. He's playing it like, completely sincerely, for real about it, right? Don't call me Shirley. So it's like, I love that performance. I love that chemistry, that interaction.
I mean, I really love Edie McClurg, who plays Chastity Pariah.
She's the secretary in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes.
Great. She is super funny in this.
I mean, any movie that she's in, she is just chomping on the scenery, and she's doing it in this movie. I mean, I love when Elvira's trying to fix the marquee, and of course she trips, and, it looks like,
The adventures of how to fuck.
And then she, Chastity, just collapses on the stairs of the church, which is also the same church from Blazing Saddles.
Oh, of course.
That whole setup.
Game recognized game.
That whole setup right there, I'm like, we were there when we went to Warner Brothers earlier this year. I was like, I walked where Elvira walked.
You were there. She was so close.
I was so close.
But yeah, like there are really good funny bits in this. I think the actor who's playing Uncle Vinny, which I'm gonna forget his name because it's like very long. But
William Morgan Shepherd.
William Morgan Shepherd, thank you. I think he is great in this movie because he is doing kind of what I said about the Leslie Nielsen thing. He's not in a comedy. He's in a Hammer horror film.
Oh, he is, yeah.
He is in a different movie altogether, and then Elvira shows up into his horror movie.
And then it finally turns into a horror movie, like in the last 10 minutes.
Yes, where they're going through the graveyard, and it's all spooky.
Well, let alone they're trying to burn her at the stake.
Yes, they're burning her at the stake for witchcraft, which I love the scene where he's like, I know how to kill Elvira. Like, he's fucking Quint in Jaws. Mm-hmm. Like, I know how to kill her, Sheriff. We're gonna accuse her of witchcraft. and he throws out the fucking old book, the one that says the rules, and it's
How I Did It.
How I Did It. And it's like, there's good, funny bits in this movie. It's just, I feel they're a little few and far between, but the actors involved in those are great. And like we said, Eddie McClure, who, plays Chastity, what have you, she is fucking hilarious when they get doped up at the cookout, right? Because Elvira's thing of revenge is she uses her aunt's cookbook that's actually a witch's tome to cook up a casserole to get revenge on everyone, but it doesn't turn into a casserole monster like she thought it would. It turns into just like an aphrodisiac that makes everyone just want to start.
And it's so awkward because it's a lot of old people, and it's just like, it makes you cringe, but at the same time, it's hilarious.
Yes, because they're just in on the gag. They're just going for it.
And Elvira's just so repulsed because she was like, I was just trying to conjure up a monster, and no, all these old people want to bang, and they're trying to do this in the park.
Again, astounds me this movie is PG-13. Do you think this movie would have been better if they just went for it for a hard R?
I mean, thinking of 80s time is like, yeah, I could see how this would be a PG-13 movie. Now, no, this would be an R-rated movie. We need a sequel. We need the direct sequel.
Oh, yeah, because I guess we'll get into, I guess we could get into a little bit of the sequel, because after this there is technically another Elvira movie. It's not a sequel.
Elvira Haunted Hills.
Not a great movie?
I haven't seen it.
It's not a great movie.
I mean, I'll give it a watch because it's Elvira, but yeah, it's a thing where she's tried to get a direct sequel made to this movie, and there's been times where, they got close, but the money fell through, and I think it was either 2018 or 2019, she was really trying again. So hopefully soon, maybe we can pull it off.
Maybe.
But to loop it back to, the Hammer horror version that Uncle Vinny is living in.
Yes.
We finally get the horror element that we want, where we kind of get Elvira's backstory about how her great aunt was a witch and her great uncle killed her mother,
who was also a witch, and she has magic powers.
She has magic powers, and she has this, special ring that, has powers. And then, we've forgotten to talk about one of the most important characters of this movie, Gonk. Yes,
the poodle that I believe is also the same dog from Silence of the Lambs and Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I don't know if that's Speck. I think that's a different dog.
Okay, because I know the one in Pee-wee's Big Adventure is also the same dog as in Silence of the Lambs. Which, the more you know, right?
Yeah, but we have Gonk, who belongs to Aunt Morgana, and Gonk is a familiar.
That turns into other cool animals.
I have a familiar of my own at home. She hasn't turned into anything else yet, but, with time, she'll learn. But yeah, you have Gonk, who gets left to Elvira, and she's trying to get rid of Gonk. But, over time, she finds love for him, and, he really saves the day a couple of times.
Yes.
And it's, I just love that, we get flashbacks of her, being taken to her aunt's house as a baby. And
Baby Elvira is one of the funniest sight gags in this movie. It is hilarious. It is
I love Baby Elvira.
It is a newborn, 1 year old or
not even one. It's
6 months old baby, and it's got the makeup, it's got the little bouffant haircut, it's got the gown. It is one of the funniest fucking things in this movie.
And then you have the dog from The Omen.
Yes, the big fucking Rottweiler just carrying the baby.
Carrying the bassinet, to safety, and, that's why I love Gonk, and just, that he's this familiar that goes and helps her and, protects the book. I gotta, teach Binks to hide things like that. Oh, someone's coming, I better go hide this under the couch, stash it.
It'd be nice.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
But yeah, that's one of those things, this movie to me is it is playing too many tones, and each tone on its own is funny, but then when they try to mix it, it just smashes into the other one.
I mean, I love when Uncle Vinny's at full power. This is when the town, this is after she's been saved from being burned at the stake.
Mm-hmm.
And we get her kind of in her alien garb where she's got the headband on and she's got like the machine gun.
Yes, which Aliens reference in
Uh,
'88, or is
was-
that like a Rambo joke?
it might be Rambo. I was just picking up on the chick from Aliens.
Oh, you mean Ripley, the
No,
greatest female
Not
protagonist?
Ripley, the other one. The
Vasquez,
one. There you go.
played by Julia Goldstein.
Yes.
Not remembering one of the greatest female characters of the 1980s.
I mean, we did miss her at the Frida recently.
We did.
I'm still, kicking myself over that. But I mean, we get, that great sequence, and, it's just like Uncle Vinny's like, you think a gun will really take me down? And, he's just, turning people into pigs and, just mayhem. And we finally get Elvira in the cemetery.
Yes.
There's fog and, she trips. And it's just like, all the tropes of good horror movies.
Or at least the horror movies that she talks about. And it's like, this is what I wanted the whole movie to be, is you insert Elvira into the B horror stuff that she makes fun of. And it's like, that's what I wanted.
And it's so fun that, she doesn't understand her powers because they're obviously new to her. But it's, things that are her everyday that she's able to use to take down Uncle Vinny.
You mean the heel shuriken?
Yes, the stiletto to the forehead. When she's trying to break out of the cemetery, she breaks the chains with her boobs.
Five comedy points. Comedy points for the boob.
Kino, that scene. I feel you, girl. I think I could break through a chain too.
Jesus Christ. That's the thing. It's funny. The movie is funny and it's very charming. And I'm like, I want to really like this movie. And then it's like, there's so much of it where I'm like, the pacing of it feels like it's a herky-jerky mess, and I
just love, after Uncle Vinny is, destroyed, and she's just kind of like, we fixed up the house. This was gonna be my golden ticket to Vegas, and now the house is destroyed. And we've had the town kind of be like, you know what? We like you. We really gave you a hard time. And it was certain people that were, the puppet masters and kind of, keeping us from accepting you. Where it's like, we'll help you. Whatever you need, whether you leave or you stay, you always have a home here. And it's kind of nice that we kind of get that, kind of wholesome vibe after the whole movie. She's being picked on because of her aesthetic.
Mm.
And
she's also, corrupting the youth of the town.
Yeah, but
she killed a gas station attendant on the way over.
Not on purpose. And the axe murder, he just forgot his axe.
Yeah, she had no problem with that one.
And she's just being polite, hey, you forgot your accessory. Here, let me give it back to you.
But yeah, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. You have any final thoughts on this one?
I love this movie. There might be issues. The sadness of this not, doing financially well when it first came out.
That and leading to a sequel or lining up into more stuff.
It was launching her into her own sitcom.
Yeah.
They filmed a pilot, and I've seen bits and pieces of it, and it's actually really good. And people were ready to greenlight it, and one of the producers at NBC or whatever just completely nixed it. They're like, no, this is, a bit too much. She's, just a little bit too risque. And it's like, I think I would have watched that on loop.
It's the thing, and it's the thing where the Elvira character ends up in a place of pop culture, like it becomes a pop culture icon, right?
Yeah.
But the act and the shtick, I think it could only really exist at the height it did only in the 1980s. In the 90s, I think the old adage, you got to go away for us to remember how much we love you. I think that was the thing. After the movie, she goes on to do more live shows and keeps doing work. And she's never stopped working, right?
No, she hasn't. But what makes the sitcom work, I think what would have worked, was that it was Elvira and she was living with her aunt or her great aunt. And her aunt was a witch, and Elvira was learning her powers. And then Elvira has a niece, and the niece, it was either adopted, but she finds her way back to the family. So it's this household of witches where they're kind of learning to coexist.
Did this pilot possibly get repurposed for another family sitcom called Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Possibly.
This sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I was kind of like, that's why I would have watched it on a loop. I'm like, this is great. The hijinks of, this is our family. This is what we do. We can't help that, we're witches and we're just trying to coexist with, normies, muggles.
Muggles. They would have popularized the term muggles before Harry Potter.
See, it all leads back to Elvira.
But yeah, my opinion on the movie, it's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really funny movie with really good actors, and I said that throughout the
Mm-hmm.
thing. I enjoy the movie. I laughed throughout the movie. I don't think it's a bad movie. It's just not made as well as I wished it was,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not made as well as it could have been with the same assets and tools they had. I think they could have made a better film.
I think if it had been given the same amount of care that Pee-wee was given, it could have been, another box office success.
Yes, if it was just given to a different director or a different studio took a hold of it,
because it had a good chunk of money to make the movie. It was filmed at Warner Brothers. I think if it had just been placed in the right set of hands,
we've gotten a better product.
Yeah.
Even if they kept the same script, which I don't know what draft this script is, it does feel like it might be a second or first or second draft. I don't want to be rude or anything, but it doesn't feel like this was the most polished script they could have gotten. And forcing in the teenager stuff probably didn't help, and that was probably a reason why it feels weird, the tonal shifts. But overall, I'd still say you should watch this movie. It's one of those things where it's like this movie. It's not well made. Like the Kino is not here. But god damn it, I can't think of another funny Halloween movie that I would want to watch this season.
Do you have a favorite line from this movie?
I want you to remember me, not just as a great set of boobs, but also a great set of legs. I fucking died. I died. I don't know why. It's the Cassandra Peterson's delivery, the fact she's looking off into the middle distance like she's about to say, and I will never go hungry again. Like it's fucking Gone with the Wind. And it's like she's committing to it. And then when she's like, I want you to remember me more than a great rack. And then she's like, oh, wait. Like she turns away and she comes back. And also a great set of legs. I don't know why.
And then the music needs to swell.
The music swells a little bit, and I don't know why. It's the delivery, it's the look, I don't know why. I fucking died. That line fucking killed me. I'm sitting in my room. I'm watching this fucker on YouTube. It's also free on YouTube, everyone out there. You can watch it on YouTube.
It's also on Prime, too.
Yeah, it's on Prime, but like I don't mean like free on YouTube, like somebody like on YouTube Movies. That's
YouTube
one of the free
with
ones.
ads, yeah.
Yeah, YouTube with ads or YouTube Premium. Get YouTube Premium, no ads, or get a good ad blocker. But yeah, watching like that line fucking killed me. I laughed like a silly bitch. But what about you? You got a favorite line? Favorite
gag?
I
mean, Elvira has a ton of awesome one-liners. Mine also takes place at the bowling alley because that is the happening place in this town.
Of course.
But it's in the beginning of the movie when she first arrives and she's getting harassed by Kaneki and that one other weird dude. And she pours the beers in their lap because they're being very gross and rude with her. And she jumps up and she pulls her little dagger off of her belt. I cut you, Meng. It's a quick line, but it gets me every time.
It's the delivery.
It's the delivery, but it's also so unexpected. I watched the movie twice because I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm like, I need to watch
this is not a every season, every year kind of movie?
I try, but I also don't want it to be, where it's kind of like, oh, well, I just watched it. I try to save it.
This is one of those movies you're like, if I watch it too much, I'm going to start noticing the lines in the sand on this one.
Perhaps, but this time was like, okay, the first time I'm going to watch it just to enjoy it and just to really laugh. And then the second time I'm going to go through to watch it and really enjoy it and laugh, but pay more attention. But each time that scene, it tickles me. It's so funny because, she hops up and I cut you, Meng, and it's just like, what?
Yes, and then she does like, see, the knife's not even real.
Yeah, she's like, see, it's not real. And it's just like, It's classic Elvira.
But yeah, so we would both recommend giving it a watch.
Oh, absolutely.
We disagree on quality, but we'd recommend giving it a watch.
Yes.
But next week, it is time for something completely different.
It is, but before we get to that different thing, we're going to do something a little bit special. We're going to be dropping a bonus episode for Halloween.
Yes, we are. It's kind of a prelude into something else we're doing later on in the year.
Yes.
But on Halloween, we're going to be releasing our special bonus episode. It's going to be a little bit shorter. It's just something, really quick, but it's one of your favorite movies.
One of my favorite movies of all time, with one of my favorite people of all time guesting on it. We're going to be talking about The Nightmare Before Christmas with cousin of the podcast, Yasmin Back.
Yes, we are. It's going to be a fun little episode. It's, nice, quick, bite-sized piece. We're going to get in. It's another one of those movies where I'm like, God damn it. This script doesn't make any sense, but I love every fucking song in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
But after that, we're going to go into next month, which is November?
Exactly.
Yes.
November here at the podcast means that it's November. We're not going to release our first title yet for November.
Because we don't know what it is.
Exactly, because that is the premise of this month. We're not picking our November titles. We're having guests come on and pick movies that we've never seen before.
And then we're going to watch them, and we're going to talk about them. And hopefully we see some good ones, because I don't know how many people we got on this podcast that want sweet revenge and having us watch some absolute trash.
Yeah, but at the same time, we've had past Novembers where we've pulled some, classics, Cool Hand Luke, Giant, really big movies. But who knows? Maybe our guests will surprise us and we'll find new films that we absolutely love.
But if you wanted to listen to that and catch up with us, where can they go?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and eventually YouTube.
Yeah, you can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That's The Film Vault on YouTube, where eventually Dean will get off his ass and upload video versions of this podcast, all disguised as slideshows. But yeah, you can check that out, like, comment, subscribe, and you can also follow us on our social media at
The Film Club Podcast on Instagram, where we post daily stories, upcoming episodes, like our November episodes, and random adventures we go on.
And with that,
unpleasant dreams. I've always wanted to do that. I love you, Elvira.
Have a good week, everybody.